The walls of the basement were thin and damp, the kind that made winters bone cold and summers smell like mildew. A single window, high up on the wall, let in just enough light to remind Emma that the world outside kept moving while she stood still. Her laptop sat on a rickety desk, covered in post-it notes and worn keyboard letters, the Wi-Fi barely strong enough to load emails. Above her, laughter echoed, the clink of wine glasses, the occasional sharp voice of her mother-in-law, Margaret. Emma had grown used to the sound of heels on hardwood, to the way Margaret paused at the top of the basement stairs before yelling, "You better not be wasting electricity down there." She had been living in the basement for 8 months now. After losing her waitressing job during the pandemic and struggling to find a new one without a college degree, Emma had swallowed her pride and accepted her husband Mark's offer to stay with his mother just for a few weeks. But weeks turned into months, and Margaret never let her forget it. "You're a grown woman living like a leech," Margaret would sneer during dinner. "No degree, no job. What do you do all day? Stare at your phone." Emma said nothing. She had learned to bite her tongue. But inside, something was burning, not shame, but ambition. In the silence of the basement, she had started teaching herself to code through free online tutorials. HTML, JavaScript, Python. At first, it was a distraction. Then, it became an obsession. One Thursday night, Margaret stormed down the stairs, her face red with wine and irritation. "This is it. I'm done supporting you. You're a disgrace to this family. You have until Monday to pack up and leave." Emma didn't cry. She looked Margaret in the eyes, nodded once, and said, "Okay." That weekend, she packed her bags. One suitcase, one laptop, and a brain full of ideas. Mark offered to help, but Emma declined. "Don't," she said quietly. "This is my problem now." Emma caught a bus to Los Angeles with the last of her savings. Her childhood friend, Alicia, let her crash in the spare room of a tiny Venice apartment. There were cockroaches and peeling paint, but for the first time in months, Emma breathed. She worked from sunup to sundown, not for someone else, but on a project she'd dreamed up herself, a web-based automation tool for small online businesses. No flashy logos, no startup funds, just code and sweat. Every rejection email stung. Every bug that crashed her prototype brought a new wave of doubt. But she kept building. Then one day, a tweet changed everything. A popular tech influencer stumbled across Emma's tool on a niche developer forum and posted, "Why is no one talking about this? Just tried this indie web automation service and it saved me hours." Built by a high school grad working from a couch. Insane. Overnight, Emma's inbox exploded. She had hundreds of signups, and within 2 weeks, a VC firm reached out. "We think you're onto something," the email said. "Let's talk investment." Emma didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, but because of the weight of a new reality forming. She was no longer the girl in the basement. By the end of the month, Emma had closed a $2.5 million seed round. 6 weeks later, her company, Code Current, was valued at $30 million. Her co-working space turned into a sleek office in downtown LA. Employees followed. So did media coverage. She kept her head down and worked, not for revenge, but for herself. And then came the purchase, a sprawling glass and wood oceanfront home in Maui, Hawaii. She wired the money in one click. No mortgage, no hesitation. 3 months after Margaret had kicked her out, Emma stepped barefoot onto the balcony of her new home, holding a glass of pineapple juice, watching the waves roll in. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mark. "My mom is asking about you. Things are not great. She lost her house. Dad left. She might need help." Emma stared at the message, and she smiled. Emma didn't reply to Mark's message right away. Instead, she closed her eyes and let the ocean breeze wash over her face. The scent of salt and plumeria carried a kind of peace she hadn't known she needed. Just a few months ago, she had slept on an air mattress, coding for 15 hours a day with roaches crawling near her power strip. Now, she woke to the sound of waves. The silence was hers. The space was hers. The victory was hers. Still, that message from Mark lingered. She opened her laptop and clicked into a private Slack channel titled DevOps Core. Her team, now 13 full-time engineers, was in a flow, working on version 2.0 of Code Current. The company's biggest new client, an e-commerce platform used by over 10,000 shops, had just signed a multi-year deal. She typed a quick message. "Morning team. Take the day slow. I'll be offline today. A personal errand. She booked a first-class ticket to Phoenix. The next day, Emma stood on Margaret's front lawn. The house was empty, already foreclosed. A faded red notice clung to the front door like a scarlet letter. She wasn't here to gloat. She just needed to see it with her own eyes. From the corner of her vision, she noticed a familiar figure walking down the sidewalk. Margaret. She looked nothing like the woman Emma remembered. Her sharp gray bob had dulled. Her designer purse was gone, replaced by a beat-up canvas bag. She walked with hesitation now, not authority. Emma. Margaret stopped cold. Hey, Emma said calmly. Margaret blinked. I didn't expect to see you here. I heard about the house. Margaret looked away. Everything collapsed after Mark left. The mortgage. My credit. I had to sell everything. Emma gave a slow nod. You told me once I was uneducated. Useless. Remember? Margaret swallowed. I was angry. That wasn't fair. Emma's voice didn't waver. It was honest. At least, that's what you believed. Margaret's eyes welled up. Emma. I was wrong. You didn't deserve that. I thought you were wasting your life. I was building mine. A silence settled between them. Then Margaret asked, voice shaking, where are you living now? Emma pulled out her phone and showed a picture. The Maui house, the pool, the ocean, the sunrise. Margaret's breath caught. Is that yours? Free and clear. Tears spilled down Margaret's cheeks. I lost everything. I don't have a job. I don't know where I'm going to live. Emma paused. This was the woman who had tossed her out like trash. But this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about dignity, hers. I have a guest house, she said carefully. It's not huge, but it's private. Furnished. By the ocean. Margaret's eyes widened. Are you serious? Emma nodded. But there are rules. You live there. You respect the space. No control. No insults. No pretending I owe you anything. Margaret's hands trembled. Of course. I swear. Emma, thank you. I'm not doing it for you, Emma said. I'm doing it because I refuse to become what you were to me. That night, Emma booked Margaret's one-way ticket to Maui. When Margaret stepped off the plane, she looked stunned. The warmth of the island hit her skin like a foreign memory. Emma was waiting in a sky-blue Jeep, sunglasses on, hair in a loose bun. They didn't hug. They didn't cry. But there was an understanding, something raw and new. As they drove along the coast, Margaret whispered, I don't deserve this. Emma smiled, eyes fixed on the road ahead. No, but I do. Maui was paradise, but even paradise could feel crowded when shared with someone who once treated you like a burden. Emma watched Margaret carefully those first few days. The guest house was separated from the main villa by a bamboo path and hibiscus hedges. It had its own kitchen, its own entrance, even a small patio with a hammock. Emma had done everything possible to make it feel like a space of dignity, not charity. Still, old habits die hard. At first, Margaret tried to act cheerful. She made small talk, cleaned obsessively, and cooked meals she hoped Emma would compliment. Emma remained polite but distant. She didn't want a facade. She wanted truth. It came one humid Thursday afternoon. Emma had just returned from a Zoom board meeting with her investors. She stepped out onto her lanai, laptop in hand, sipping iced tea, when she heard Margaret's voice, faint but agitated, from the guest house patio. I don't care if she's rich now, Margaret snapped on a phone call. It's temporary. She never finished school. She just got lucky. Emma froze. Her first instinct was to walk away, to let it slide. But the anger she'd buried, the years of judgment, the dismissal, the shame flared. She walked over, silently, and stood where Margaret could see her. Margaret's face went white as chalk. She fumbled to end the call. Emma, I didn't know you. You never change, do you? Emma said calmly. I didn't mean. You meant every word. Emma's voice was low, steady. This house? That guest house? My company? None of it's luck. I built it from zero. While you were mocking me, I was creating something. Margaret's mouth trembled. I was scared. I didn't know how to cope when Mark left. I took it out on you. Emma stared at her for a long moment. Do you remember the last thing you said to me before I left your house? Margaret looked down. Emma didn't wait for the answer. You told me I was a failure, that I had nothing to offer. She let that hang in the air. Margaret finally spoke, barely above a whisper. I was wrong. Emma took a breath. No, you were right back then. I was jobless. I was scared. But what you didn't see was who I was becoming. She turned to walk away. Margaret called after her. Why did you bring me here? Emma? If you hate me, why not just leave me in Arizona? Emma paused. Because this wasn't about hate. It was about breaking the cycle. You tore people down. I'm building things up. Even if it means helping someone who never helped me. Days passed. Margaret didn't call anyone. She barely left the guest house. Then, one morning, Emma received a knock on her main door. Margaret stood there, holding a small ceramic box. I know you don't owe me anything, she said, but I wanted to show you something. Emma opened the box. Inside were photographs, faded, bent at the edges. One showed Margaret in her 20s, standing in front of a typewriter, a half-written manuscript beside her. I wanted to be a writer, Margaret said quietly. But I gave it up when I married Mark's father. He told me dreams were childish. So I turned into someone bitter. I buried that part of me. And when I saw you working, even in my basement, I hated you for it. Because you didn't quit. Emma studied the photo. For the first time, she saw not just the harsh woman who had belittled her, but a person with her own abandoned dreams. I don't know how to fix things, Margaret added. But I want to try. That evening, Emma invited Margaret to a dinner with her team, a sunset gathering at a local seafood restaurant. Her lead engineer, a 22-year-old genius named Chloe, cracked jokes over poke bowls. Emma introduced Margaret simply as my guest from the mainland. No titles, no shame. Margaret kept quiet, watching Emma shine, not as someone's wife or daughter-in-law, but as a leader. When they returned home, Margaret stood at the edge of the lanai. You're not the same person I kicked out. Emma looked up at the stars. No, I'm not. A week later, Emma returned from a business trip to San Francisco to find a surprise waiting on the guest house porch, a short printed manuscript with a note. For the girl I never believed in. Thank you for reminding me who I once was. Emma flipped through the pages. It was a story, fiction but raw, about a young woman trapped by other people's opinions, finding her voice through fire and silence. It wasn't polished, but it had heart. She smiled and whispered, maybe there's hope for you yet. The invitation came casually, an email titled Dinner Thursday from Emma to Margaret, with a calendar link and a simple message. I'd like to talk. Just us. Margaret stared at it for over an hour before clicking accept. On Thursday evening, the sun dipped low over the ocean, casting golden streaks across the deck of Emma's house. A private chef prepared dinner, not out of extravagance, but because Emma wanted the space to stay focused. No distractions, no small talk, just closure. Margaret arrived early, wearing a linen blouse and her hair tied back. She looked lighter, not younger, not necessarily happier, but more human. They sat at a long wooden table beneath string lights, surrounded by orchids and soft waves crashing in the distance. For a while, they ate in silence. Coconut glazed fish, jasmine rice, mango salad. Then Emma broke the quiet. You wrote something brave, she said softly, setting the manuscript on the table. Margaret looked surprised. You read it? I did. It's good. Honest. Margaret's shoulders dropped with relief. I thought you might throw it out. Emma shook her head. I don't throw away stories. Even messy ones. Margaret smiled faintly. It's fiction, but not entirely. I figured. They sat in comfortable silence again. This time, it wasn't tension, it was respect. Earned, not demanded. But Emma wasn't done. I need to ask you something, she said, setting her glass down. Why me? Margaret blinked. What do you mean? Why were you so hard on me? Why was it so easy to write me off? Margaret looked down at her plate. Because you reminded me of me. But you didn't make the same mistakes. Emma leaned in, listening. I married into a world that didn't want dreams. Just duty, Margaret continued. And when I saw you, unpolished, uneducated, but fearless, I saw someone who might actually become what I was too afraid to fight for. She looked up, eyes glassy. So I tore you down. Not because I hated you, but because I hated that you still had time. Emma absorbed every word. You wanted me to fail. Margaret nodded slowly. Because if you didn't, then I had no excuse. The ocean crashed, louder now. Or maybe just closer. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Margaret added. I just wanted you to know the truth before it's too late. Emma paused. Too late. Margaret looked away. I haven't told Mark. Or anyone. But I've been sick. The doctors in Phoenix, they found something. It's advanced. Emma's heart lurched. What kind of sick? Stage 4 colon cancer. It's in my liver. The words hung in the air like smoke. I didn't come here to die, Margaret added. I came here because I didn't want to be alone when I did. For the first time in a long while, Emma didn't know what to say. She looked at the woman who had been a villain in her life, then a guest, then a writer, and now, just a human being facing the end. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked quietly. Because I wanted to be someone else before you knew. Emma reached across the table and gently took Margaret's hand. Then let's make these last pages count. Over the next few weeks, Margaret changed. Not in dramatic ways, but in the small, honest gestures that mattered. She started working with a hospice counselor. She wrote daily. She laughed more. And Emma found herself doing something she never imagined. Caring. They watched old movies together. Shared wine on the lanai. Emma even read a new draft of Margaret's story, offering notes, encouragement, something Margaret had never given her, but now humbly accepted. When the end came, it wasn't tragic. It was quiet. Margaret passed away on a warm September morning, in the guest house, surrounded by jasmine candles and soft Hawaiian music. Emma was there, holding her hand. Later, Emma found an envelope on her doorstep. Inside, a handwritten letter. You turned pain into power. You created something from nothing. I see now what I never saw when it mattered. You were always meant to lead, Emma. I'm proud of you. I'm sorry it took dying to say it. Margaret. At the funeral, a small gathering on the beach, Emma scattered Margaret's ashes into the waves. No grand speeches. Just one whisper into the wind. Rest now. The cycle ends here.